Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Welcome everybody to the Safina Society Nothing But Facts live stream on a day where I expect a lot of incoming because a lot of you didn't like the fatwa which I shared, which is a fatwa. It means there's both sides to it. No fatwa has one side to it. And that was the fatwa of Sheikh Mahmoud Shabib. See, I think he didn't publish it. He told me this. And he's in prison. The Sheikh is in, may Allah release him from prison. And they dropped all charges on him, which is great. But we will, inshallah, when he gets out, maybe it's not the first thing to do when you get out, but to discuss it. But Sheikh al-Bouti's is online. And their fatwa is based upon two premises. Number one is that people are treated by their outward. And Kareem, pull that mic over. And I know it took 20 minutes to get my mic on. We'll take another 20 minutes, though, to get Kareem's mic on. But you can figure that out. But the premise is that people are treated in the public space, according to the law, based on their outward form. That does not justify a person's behavior before that. And a thing could be unlawful. You have to try to stop it in the beginning, but once it's done, then there's going to be another treatment of it. One gave an example, and this is not obviously, it's just the analogy of that principle, that on the founding, one country wanted to secede from another, and this is obviously India and Pakistan. So one of these Indian scholars was against it completely. But then when it happened, he moved. So he cited basically this principle that you could be against something completely, but if and when it happens, there's another mode of operation and another law that takes over afterwards. But nonetheless, Sheikh Saeed Ramadan al-Bouti's premise is that a person has completely transformed. So that itself has some vagueness to it, because what does he mean by that? You can never completely transform. So he's also not giving a fatwa on a premise that could never happen. So what does he mean by it? He meant on the, or at least Sheikh Mahmoud Shabib, who knows about that fatwa, the outward. All the outward of the body resembles the opposite gender now. So there's no hair. Let's say it's a man to becoming a woman. There's no hair on the face anymore. The man has now grown breasts. There's no hair all over the body. The voice has become soft. The man has chopped off his genitalia. So the ruling on all of that is prohibition. And I was talking to a brother who I invited to come on. I didn't even know him, but he sounded smart. And he wanted to oppose this fatwa. So I said, come on, this isn't like, come on to the program. Because this isn't a clear nuss upon which there can be no disagreement. Even if there was disagreement, I would debate him. But on this case, I wouldn't even debate him. These are the two fatwa by trusted ulama. And I'm sure on his side, no, you don't need to record. On his side, there probably are many ulama who have given the fatwa that you will treat them based on their birth no matter what, how they were born no matter what. Well, the fatwa, the premise of Sheikh Mahmoud, the premise of Sheikh al-Bouti is you judge a person based on their external now. That doesn't mean you're saying he is a woman, but by law, he will be treated as a woman. Okay? So in this, there are a lot of ways, a lot of situations in the Sharia where you're not admitting to the essence of a thing, but you're treating them in that manner. So for example, man lam tablughu risala, people who never got the message of Islam. Or Ahl al-Fatra, between prophets. We don't say they're kuffar. There was nothing for them to do kufr of. They never got a message to do kufr of. But they're treated like kuffar. So that, I would disagree with someone calling that intellectual gymnastics. Because what is a gymnastics in it? You're not admitting that the person has changed, is a male or a female. But the outward is a female, and therefore they're saying you're going to treat them as a female. The opposite fatwa will then say, no, we're going to treat them as they were from birth. Either way, you're going to run into mashakil, because when you don't have taqwa and you go against God's will, you're going to end up with وَمَن يَتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَجْعَل لَهُ مَخْرَجًا. You didn't have taqwa in how you treated God's gift to you. And so they're not going to have you have now the opposite of a makhraj. What's a makhraj? A way out. What's the opposite of a makhraj? Barriers and problems. It's not going to be free from problems either way. Because if you say now you're going to be with your gender of birth, so the guy has completely transformed into a woman on the outside, right? And to be honest, I've rarely been duped, but sometimes you can be duped. Sometimes it is pretty convincing until their arms come out, or until they start reacting to people who insulted them. Then you could pretty much tell that there is a little bit of a difference. But a person like that, and now is trying to live in the Islamic community. Now, whether they believe it to be lawful or not, whether they repented from it or not, we know what the ruling is on that. But that's a separate question of how do they live now in the community? And that's the question that these muftis are trying to answer. So let me see if the brother wants I'm answering right now. Now, of course, Sheikh Abdallah can come on to this, bin Hamid, because he feels very strongly about this. So here's a question for you, Kareem. Someone who claims that the claim that a man wants to be a woman and a woman wants to be a man. I think in the beginning, most of us would agree this is a mental illness, right? But it's become a trend. It's become a socially accepted trend, and it's become a norm. Okay? So you can have completely normal people, but they see the whole society doing it mentally normal. It's just like maybe you've grown up with that. Maybe he's grown up with family members and been instilled from day one in his life that you have to accept this, and it is acceptable, and they are what they say they are. And then they grow up as a norm with this, and then they do it themselves. So I personally see how it can shift from beginning to be as a mental illness to 2 generations later, it's just a trend that people just do, right? Again, that's not excusing it. That's not saying our ruling changes on it, but that's just on the question of you just accommodating mental illness. At some point, it shifts from mental illness to trend. At least that's my opinion on it. Again, that doesn't. And the terminology should be elective disfigurement. That's correct. It is elective disfigurement. There are a lot of lesser disfigurements that people do that are unlawful as well. The tattooing and the excessive piercing, even on a woman, can be a form of that. This brother says, just because it's a trend like same-sex attraction doesn't move it from the realm of mental illness to a non-pathological trend. So is that a new term, a pathological trend? Whatever it is. But I think we could all fathom that is quite possible that a person, something starts off truly with accommodating a mental illness and becomes a trend after that normal people engage in. It doesn't change the ruling. It just changes our understanding of what's actually happening in the society. So does Sheikh Nadir ever speak on this fatwa? What's his fatwa on it? How do you treat someone who has completely, again, you don't completely change you're not changing the DNA inside you, obviously, but you are changing your outward appearance. And they still haven't solved the problem with the arms, right? Because the ratio of arm to torso is the arm is bigger for the men. That's why they oftentimes just put their arms behind their back in pictures, because that's a dead giveaway. But has Sheikh Nader or any of your teachers in Turkey spoken on this? Yeah. So a person has done it, and then now they're in the community. Yeah. Have you figured out Kareem's mic, Arifu? Arifu, you got a haircut? Why'd you do that? It looks good, man. Yeah. I thought it looked. It still looks good, but so that's the question. Now, keep in mind the issue of, do they believe that they have done something wrong or not? That's a separate question. You're still going to have to answer the question of what is their guidance on how to live in the community, because you're going to preach that. The masjid board will make a rule on that, and you're going to preach it to the people. And at least within the confines of our community center, this is how you're going to behave. Okay. Let me tell the brother to come on right now. No, this is Sheikh Abdallah bin Habib. Yeah, Sheikh Abdallah, would you like to hop on right now real quick? We have a few minutes. We have a 10-minute segment before our next guest. Our policy with these new things is to put out both fatwas. So I'm not even sure in the original lecture that or talk stream that we were doing, if I mentioned that this is a fatwa and there are opposite fatwas. I'm pretty sure I should. Well, even if I didn't, I should have. There are it's a fatwa. A fatwa does not mean it's a ruling in Sharia. A ruling in one of the there are rulings by ijma', and Sheikh Sadiq used to always say ijma'an. We used to answer a question. He'd say ijma'an, or he would say ala madhhabi fulan. So there are rulings that are by ijma'. There's no discussion. There's no point in even entertaining a discussion. Then there are rulings, dominant opinions within a madhab. And there are lesser, weaker opinions within a madhab. And then there are fatawa. The difference is rulings within a madhab have undergone a great amount of scrutiny over the years and have passed a certain test of time. And that is the ruling in the madhab. It's very strong. Worship Allah with it. And it becomes haram, actually, if it's for the mufti, the teacher of fiqh. They say it is haram to publicly preach the weak opinion to people in a madhab. Just because an opinion exists doesn't mean it's weak. It doesn't mean it's correct. Just as a fatwa, we haven't even gotten to fatwas yet. So it becomes his obligation to preach what is the dominant opinion of his madhab. Now, privately, he can advise someone to a weak opinion. He can even act upon it himself. But for the amma, for the public, he has to preach and teach the dominant opinion of a madhab. So we have rulings by ijma'. Then you have the dominant opinion within a madhab. Then the weaker opinion of a madhab. Then you have a fatwa. A fatwa is a brand new matter completely. Sheikh Saeed Ramadan Bouti in that video, and you could just search it up. It's if somebody wants to see it. Arifu, can you kindly send a Zoom link to binhamid.ali@gmail.com? binhamid.ali@gmail.com. He feels very strongly about this, which is fine because it is a fatwa. A man came to Habib Omar, and that's his murshid, not his fiqh teacher. His murshid. The murshid's a big deal. This is the person, your spiritual direction you take from him. You trust him that much. And he said, what happens if one of your students says something we disagree with? Okay. And he said, here, Alif, pass this to Alif. And he said, is it a matter of ijma' or a matter of disagreement? He said, no, it's a matter of opinion. He said, you can disagree with me if you wanted. So fatwa is a matter that has not come up before. There is no precedent for it. There is no precedent in Islamic history for this. There's precedent for intersex. There's precedent what we call the khuntha, hermaphrodite, has both, which is intersex. There's precedent for eunuchs. The eunuch doesn't claim to be a woman. He's a man. His manhood has been removed from him, but he's a man. There's no issue here. So there's precedent for all that, but there is precedent for a man cross-dressing. That exists, and it's haram and it's unacceptable. But there isn't precedent for the medical procedures that they're doing now, and the psychological identification that's come with it, of a man totally taking on the identity of a woman, then augmenting his body for that, or disfiguring his body, we should say, regarding that. There is no precedent for that. So Shaykh Bouti was saying, since there's no precedent, therefore we have two options. Either we don't give a ruling, or we give a ruling, and that ruling would have to be ijtihad. And the elders of the Madhhab do this ijtihad. And in this ijtihad, you only have two options. You either treat them as how they appear now, or you treat them as they were at birth. Okay? And treating them as they were at birth is probably the default, the immediate opinion, probably the default opinion. But also treating them as they are, as they appear, is what Shaykh Bouti was saying. If he has removed the outward. Our Shaykh Abdallah bin Hamid Ali is on. All right, bring him on. And yeah, Arifu. So this is an impromptu little guest appearance, and actually I was planning on to come onto your program to discuss matters, but this came up, and your friend was had some strong opinions. I'm sure you have strong opinions about it, which we said in Safina Society's policy when it comes to matters of madhhab, dominant opinions of madhabs, let alone fatwa, you have to share all the opinions that come from the reputable scholars of Ahl Sunnah. And as I said earlier, I'm pretty sure in that video, in that stream, I did mention this is their opinion. And there are fuqaha with the opposite opinion, but the first part is what got clipped. But either way, now we're bringing you the opposite perspective on this fatwa, which is the fatwa stating that this is totally wrong and you treat people how they are based on their birth. All right, Shaykh Abdallah, you could take it away.
All right, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. MashaAllah. It definitely impromptu, and I'm glad that it's not for longer than just a few minutes. I actually have an exam to proctor in a second.
No problem.
But I was sending these messages from a friend of mine who's in Florida, who's been dealing with this issue with a transgender man, for example, at a particular masjid there for about a year or so now. And he's been very passionate about the issue, and especially being that this is an individual who's been embraced by a lot of Muslims as an actual woman, right? And he's found that very, 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 very problematic. I find it problematic as well, but I think probably a good place to begin here is with Dr. Bouti's actual fatwa. And one thing that is he repeats more than one time is the question that we call the waqi', right? And so any person who studies usul al-fiqh, right? Usually introductory, you begin with like the waraqat Imam al-Juwayni, for example, and right at the beginning of the waraqat, one of the words that I mentioned in the waraqat is the word ilm, and what it actually means, right? His definition of knowledge. And so he says knowledge, ma'rifatu shay, or ma'rifatu ma'lumi ala ma huwa bihi fil waqi', to know something as it truly is in reality, right? And this is the fundamental challenge of any mufti, is to build a fatwa on what we call the waqi', right? And so we all agree that fatwa is an opinion, right, of a learned Muslim. based upon that learned Muslim's comprehension of the Islamic sources. But quite often, fatwas are issued, and while they may have good legal or rather scriptural basis, I guess you would say, quite often they're flawed because they're not built upon the waqi', the actual waqi', right? And I do think that this is an important area to challenge even Dr. Bouti, rahimahullah, on is that did he properly understand the waqi', or did he express himself based upon a theoretical, which is simply a hypothetical that he was talking about? Because it does seem like he accepts his hypothetical as true. In fact, because his hypothetical was that, okay, we talked to specialists, and we asked the specialist, is this individual who is supposedly transformed now to a woman both externally and internally, right? Then he says, na'am, right? So he sort of answers his question. And then he says, okay, well, if that's true, then we shall treat the individual as a woman, right? But one could push back and say, well, no, this is not actual fact. This had not been proven to be the waqi', because he later goes on and he mentions the example of the khunta, right, the hermaphrodite. And those of us who studied, especially in inheritance law, for example, because he mentioned examples from inheritance law regarding the hermaphrodite, that we learned that there are two different types of hermaphrodite, the khunta mushkil and khunta ghayr mushkil. Yes, there's one who is problematic, in other words, an individual who's obscure gender.
Very
We really
50-50.
can't determine. Right, exactly. We don't know exactly what particular sex that person belongs to, because a hermaphrodite is one who's born with both organs or born with neither, right?
Yeah,
so,
like very close.
Right, exactly. So the idea is that, okay, well, how do we know what particular sex that person belongs to? So the ulama came up with a formula for this. So how do you know that this person is actually a male or female? They'll say, well, you can determine it either when they're young or after they reach puberty. Some of the signs prior to puberty may be, for example, the urinary tract. They'll say, okay, well, if this person urinates from their vagina, then a woman. If from the penis, then it's a male. But if from both, then the person remains mushkil. Then at any rate, there are a lot of these pseudoscientific methods that they had introduced, and to which Imam Shadee, for example, actually objected to at the time. But they became normative in the Islamic tradition, right? So, but the hermaphrodite, scientifically, right? Because there's what we call a true hermaphrodite. Then we have those we call the pseudohermaphrodites. Most hermaphrodites actually what we call pseudohermaphrodites, meaning that internally they're one sex, externally they look like they belong to both, right? And you can know, well, if it's a male, has male gonads. If it's female, she has ovaries, right? So a true hermaphrodite has both internal and external genitalia, right? The organs, right? And that itself is extremely rare in nature, right? That it actually happens. So the vast majority of people who are actually classified as hermaphrodites are pseudohermaphrodites, right? So here the challenge would be to whether or not Dr. Bouti actually got it right with respect to the waqi', right? So if you don't get the waqi' correct, then your fatwa is not going to be correct either, right?
It's be irrelevant.
Right, exactly. But I think even more important than this is that how embracing gender ideology itself, it threatens Islam and it threatens humanity as well. In other words, the idea that a person can become a woman by simply chopping off parts and adding other parts, or become a man by chopping off parts and adding parts to his or her body. There doesn't seem to be anything in Islamic history that supports this, in my opinion, in my understanding, because even if we were to take, for example, the eunuch, right? So the eunuch, had his, genitalia removed. But I'm not aware of any scholar who historically said that the eunuch belongs to the female sex.
Of course
right?
not. Yeah.
Or that the eunuch is now a third sex, right? Now, you find ulama would say that the eunuch shouldn't lead the prayer, because they say, okay, well, because his gender is a bit obscured now, but generally people, he still pray with the men. You don't have to have a special place. The hermaphrodites had a special place for them to pray, right? Because in particular, the hermaphrodites who we were unsure what sex they belonged to. Men prayed in a certain section, women prayed in a different section. The hermaphrodites had their own special place that they prayed, right? So when you find learned people say things like, well, if the parts have been removed and other parts have been added, then this person now belongs to this new sex. That in itself causes serious outrage, right? Because especially someone who understands, human biology and anatomy, of course, and again on the level as well of like DNA and the chromosomes and et cetera, right? They understand it, but that you don't just become the other thing by adding and removing parts, right? Either XX or XY or some sort of variation within those two types that we have is a binary, right? It's a sexual binary that Islam has upheld, right? So if we ourselves as Muslims are struggling with waqa, reality, right, then that threatens, it threatens Islam and it threatens humanity, right? In my opinion, I would argue that it threatens both Islam and it threatens humanity because a proper hukum is only proper when it is built upon the waqa, right? So if we misunderstand or misinterpret the waqa, then our fatwa naturally is going to be erroneous as well. And even the logicians, they say, hukmu ala shay far'un an at-tasawwur, right? So if you don't conceive of the issue in the right way, then your judgment is going to be erroneous, right? So again, coming back in summary, a fatwa is an opinion, is built upon speculation. We have every right to disagree with the fatwa, say the person is wrong, right? I think even we have the right to say that this is a really, really seriously flawed fatwa, right? But it, of course, you don't do takfir of anyone. You don't, as a result of that. So sorry to,
So his premise, the question is, unfortunately, we'll never know because obviously Shaykh Bouti has passed away,
right?
And there's no way to interrogate or to investigate or to ask him for clarification on what he actually meant by completely transformed. Did he mean the outward only? Did he mean the inward? Because if he means a complete transformation that will never take place, or at least right now the technology doesn't exist to ever make it take place, that renders the fatwa to be just meaningless. So that would then require us to think that he gave a meaningless fatwa. Whereas the premise of, or the introduction of his Q&A was that the Sharia does not leave any matter without an answer. So that's what, in my mind, it wouldn't be possible for him then to put a completely non-existent hypothetical and answer that, because he's clearly trying to be practical. So from immediate understanding is that he has been updated or informed about, whether through reading or other, on the nature of what's happening at the time of that recording. All right. So that was my assumption with that. And based upon now what I had said with my teacher, and I should have, I don't know if he published it. I don't think my teacher published it, and he may even change his opinion. Who knows? Fatwa can change. The mujtahid imams change their opinion in their lifetime. As you said, when new information came to them. And their students, Abdurrahman bin Qasim, changed, differed from Malik when he discovered information that Malik didn't have. And that becomes, it's in the Maliki Madhhab that when Abdurrahman bin Qasim goes against Malik, you go with Abdurrahman bin Qasim. Although that's his teacher and the student, because the student says, I have new information he didn't have. Knowing his methodology, this would be his answer. But
even you don't have to even go that far. You can go back to Sahaba, like Umar ibn Khattab. One of his famous fatwas regarding miras related to what is called the issue of the Himariya case, where one particular year, a particular scenario appeared for him. He ruled one way, and then the following year he ruled differently. And then when people say, "Well, you ruled differently last year," he said, "Well, that's the way I ruled then, and this is the way I rule now." Right? So
they change their opinion on that, and so it's quite possible that he can change his opinion. And but their perception was that the public matters of Sharia will be judged by the outward, which is not an affirmation of what their gender is. So, but we'll see. And it seems that the I was looking up what some of the other elders of the Ummah have said about how you interact with somebody who has now taken on this identity and has that appearance, etc.
Yeah, I think there's a difference between, saying that you judge a person by the way they look when you see them. If someone looks like a woman, if you don't have any evidence otherwise that it's a woman, then you treat them as if they would be a woman, right? I think that there's a difference between that and you don't know, and when you do know, like, okay, well, actually, I know that you're not a woman, right? You look like a woman, but I know you're not a woman. So should I treat you like a woman? And I'm not totally sure if Dr. Bouti is really saying that with respect to, well, I mean, it seemed like maybe he was. I mean, I don't know, Allah knows best, but maybe with respect to marriage, right? So he's like, okay, if there are no signs, because he said if it's, there are no signs of unutha, zahiran wa batinan, right? So he said, externally and internally, right? Then this is, you treat them as if they are that thing. But I do think that in itself is a mistaken assumption based upon what we know from scientific information. I do think that there is still this tension in the fiqh itself, amongst the fuqaha historically too, about what one does when science contradicts the fiqh. Do we actually go with the scientists or we do remain with the fuqaha, right? Because you can talk about this in a lot of different levels. Let's say, for instance, like menstruation. In the Maliki school, the maximum period of menstruation is 15 days, right? Possible for maybe, certain women, right? But they base that upon what? Their interpretation of scripture, a hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about, women spending half of their lives, fasting and praying, but we can discover whether or not, the blood itself is menstrual blood or if it's something different, right? Scientifically today. And so many of us would say, oh, well, we're going to go with the fiqh, right? As opposed to going to science. So there's a bit of that tension there, right? It comes up where there's a time when the fuqaha themselves, they made a lot of pseudoscientific claims, right? And I mean, does heated water lead to vitiligo? Right. I mean, a lot of them believe that, and there's a hadith, a very weak hadith, that actually claims that, that if you leave water out in the sun, it becomes heated by the sun, you drink it, it'll change the melanin, rid you of your melanin, you get white spots on your skin. Right. So is that scientifically true? I don't think that there's evidence of it. Right. But again, they read the text and they conclude one thing. So there's that tension as well. So I'm sorry to.
No problem. There's
another guest coming. Yeah.
No problem. There's another tension, which is the tension of an appearance of something and its scientific reality.
Yeah.
So that's another tension.
Yeah.
In food, and we already have the rulings on that. In food can be sourced from najasa and then complete transformation of the substance, and that's an old mas'ala. Right. So the appearance is one thing, the actual origin is another thing. And there's also, in Shaykh al-Bouti, in that statement, and maybe that was a slip of the tongue, or I don't know, did he say in appearance externally and internally? Because that would make no sense to include the phrase internally, because internal things don't.
No, he said zahiran wa batinan. He said both, zahiran wa batinan.
Yeah, so
I watched it a few different times. He said it, zahiran wa batinan, right?
The batin doesn't have an appearance. Right.
So, right.
And so that's why their premise is our judgment is on the outside. Right. And your treatment of you is not an affirmation of that essence. So that's their premise. And we'll have to see. I want to see what some other the shuyukh from the subcontinent, because they have this in the subcontinent, but it's a bit more clear cut. It's a group of people who cross dress, and for centuries they've been cross dressed. Tablighi Jama'ah made a masjid for them, actually.
Yeah.
But that's pretty clear because it is a
Yeah,
guy.
yeah, that's pretty.
The
That's a
question is,
mukhannath, right? You know, that,
yeah,
and that just solves the question of like, are they the mal'oon as the Prophet ﷺ mentioned in the Hadith, or are they the people ala asli khilqa, right? You know, in other words, scholars make the distinction between people who are born with effeminate characteristics and they sort of exhibit them from their youth, as opposed to people who learned that it's learned behavior, right? Because we know from the Hadith that that the Prophet said that Allah curse those people who dress the men who take on the wear the clothing of
yeah.
women and wear the clothing of men. So those are additional matters that so this issue of gender. I think is really, really dangerous, and it's really interesting that the gays even are opposed to transgenderism because it challenges what it means to be gay, right?
Hmm.
Because to be gay means that you actually are attracted to the same sex. But if transgender pop up, well, sex or gender, they don't really have any true meaning, right? So,
Yeah.
it's whatever you think you are at the moment, is what you are. So
I
it's
don't
really,
even, I don't
yeah,
even buy this concept of asl al-khilqa. Like
yeah.
he's born a boy, but he has
Mhm,
this khilqa to behave as a woman.
mhm.
So since when do we go by just how we want to act?
Yeah,
All
yeah.
of us,
Well,
everyone is created with certain
mhm,
tendencies,
mhm,
but you have revelation and you have
mhm,
social norms and most importantly revelation telling you how to act otherwise. And the whole point of mujahadat an-nafs is to
mhm.
go against certain
Right.
inclinations that are not good. Unlike Freud, who says going against inclinations is what causes mental issues, we
Yeah,
actually see
yeah.
the opposite. No, certain inclinations, going against them produces fruitfulness and goodness in society,
Right,
and
right.
certain inclinations you have to
Mhm,
accommodate. So
right.
nikah has to be accommodated for men and
Mhm,
women.
mhm,
Zina has to be fought,
mhm,
right? So,
mhm,
and so on and so forth. Temptations have to be fought and
mhm.
accommodated in a certain way, and certain temptations have to be fought mutlaqan. Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah,
So
exactly.
even the
Mhm,
argument that those ladyboy kind of trans
mhm,
cross dressers,
mhm.
there should be no argument for it at all.
Right, exactly.
Tabligh, when they build that masjid for them, they
Mhm,
what it should be is the beginning of a preaching to them. The
mhm.
beginning. You may have to not address the sensitive issue in the beginning until the iman starts coming into their heart. Then you have to address this at some point. That
Right.
التشبه بالرجال والنساء, and for us, forget changing your body,
Mhm,
and changing your clothes. There's tashabbuh can be in more than that.
mhm.
Tashabbuh between men and women that is forbidden can also be in behavior, and in responsibilities.
Yes,
So
right.
a man can have a beard up to here, but if he says, my wife is going to take care of me and we agree to that, not I'm
Mhm,
just down and out and she happens to be wealthy,
mhm.
right? That's different.
Yeah,
That could happen to anybody, but you don't
right.
believe that. You don't believe that this is the right and good way to live, that I'm going to stay home, I'll take care of the kids, and you go out work. And
Mhm.
this is actually the behavior of the Yahud, right? They go
Yeah,
study the
yeah.
Torah and she goes works. But
Mhm,
now you're flipping the state of nature. So forget changing your body.
mhm.
That's like you're in another galaxy at this point. Changing your
Right.
body, changing your clothes. There's no discussion on it. Also changing even the way in which you live. Um,
Mhm. Right,
where
right,
where
exactly. Yeah, right.
if men are no longer serving in the difficult positions in a society, such as
قوامة. Yeah, الرجال
Qiwam,
قوامون على النساء. Right. Yeah.
Qiwam,
So,
and you flipping it, you
yeah.
flip the state of nature.
Mhm.
So that's like that subject. It's to me is not even up for discussion on the status
Yeah.
of gender ideology.
Mhm,
That's not even
mhm.
up for
Yeah, no, I
discussion.
totally agree. I totally agree. And one final point I wanted to make, and I have to go. It's just that, like, if I remember correct, either Ibn Hajar Asqalani or Imam al-Tabari, while agreeing that there actually can be some boys, for example, who are born and they exhibit feminine characteristics, one of them, I can't remember exactly who it was, actually said that he has to unlearn
Of course,
those
yeah.
that behavior, right? Which is really interesting. So,
All of us
and
are
it's
born with laziness. Every kid is
right.
born with laziness and no discipline, and then he's
Mhm,
set right. Now, here's another question. I know I don't want to keep you from your exam, But this is a discussion we were just having. Do you believe that it's possible for something to migrate from a mental illness to a trend that is adopted by completely rationally normal people as
Yeah, I mean,
as a
I think,
misguided
yeah,
trend?
as a social phenomenon, yeah, naturally. I mean, because it's like, okay, if it begins with people with mental illness and then it's normalized, then certain people, it infects other people, becomes contagious, so it becomes a norm that people, oh, hey, this is what people do, right? Yeah. So yeah, it can become a trend, and I think we've seen that both with homosexuality and with transgenderism,
Yeah.
that
So, and to repeat it, it would
yeah,
be for us urf mulgha. It was a trend that is canceled
yeah.
by the Sharia. We don't accept it.
Mhm,
So,
mhm,
but still the question lingers that it is possible, and probably out in the Bay, it's
mhm.
most likely possible, right? Uh, where you
I'm not
have,
from here. I'm from the East Coast. That's what
I know,
everybody
I
knows.
know. الفيلي مولدا
Right,
right?
exactly. Yeah,
So,
yeah, right. Yeah.
but it is possible that a person for many years in the future,
Mhm,
from 2015 has changed their gender. Now 20 years past, been living as a man or a woman, opposite
mhm.
gender of their birth for that many years, has been that, then at the age of 45 or 50 ends up converting to Islam, joins a community. What's your guidance to them?
Yeah, I mean, it's they join a community, then they have to acknowledge reality as it is, right? I would say that's the first thing is we understand, it's great fitna that you have, and that, these things happened to you prior to becoming Muslim. But you can't impose your reality on others, right? And force people to alter what they understand to be real, right, in order to accommodate you. Rather, you have to tolerate um, what is only natural, right? In most people, in their reaction to the discovery of these type of things. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the door of mercy is open to everyone. No one gets to say that, you can't be forgiven and, you can't be redeemed.
Mhm.
But it just happens to be your fitna. And, maybe that fitna that you had and everything may, sort of have you jump ahead of the line on Yom Kippur because you dealt with it with the proper type of patience and endurance.
Mhm.
And so that's what I would say to those people, but we can't expect others to be compelled to alter or rewire our brains when it comes to these type of issues.
Do you know medically if things can be sort of reversed? For
I think
example,
that,
a man
that
who has
there,
breasts, can it be undone?
yeah. Well, yeah, this has happened. Like, there's a famous case, the John Jones case, which actually goes back to. I'm just a couple more minutes. I know my students will be okay that
Oh, good.
I'm a
No
little
problem.
bit late.
No problem.
Right, right. But you look up the John Jones case, and I think it was in 1965 or 67, and this was the case that a lot of the progressives tried to build on the idea that psychosexual identity is more cultural, right, than natural, right? And so the claim was that it's twin boys, and one of them had a botched circumcision. And then at the time, the psychologists were of this view that, psychosocial, engineering, psychosexual sort of like understanding it can be determined by culture. So they reconstructed the little boy. He was at 2 years old, and then tried to raise him as a little girl and gave
Mhm.
him hormones over the years until eventually he discovered, what had happened. They told him the truth and became an adult. And so he decided to transition back, right? So things were removed. He was given, an artificial penis, things like that. But eventually he committed suicide. I think it was 2004 or something like that.
No, no,
So
no, 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 no.
so right. So yeah, I mean, there's some degree of the reversal that can happen, right? But I don't think that things are going to work the way that Allah created them. Once you remove things, it just kind of
Yeah.
what you would expect. And
I would also agree that you need to pin yourself to reality.
yeah, right.
I would agree that over time, you do need to be taught to retransition or untransition,
Right.
because falsehood can never lead you to anything good. And
Mhm.
flourishing in life is always by being in accord with reality as it is.
Mhm.
And civilizations that last are the ones that are more in tune with reality as it is, and civilizations that collapse and individuals that collapse they build their homes, their lives on delusions and
Yes.
falsehoods. Even if they
Mhm.
think 100% it's true, it's a falsehood. It's not the way Allah created things to be.
Mhm.
So even though that was the fatwa that I got from, and I'm not even going to say from my teacher because he didn't publicize it. I publicized it
Mhm.
many times because he told me directly this was what it
Mhm.
was. And I also told him, Sheikh al-Bouti said this, and is it correct? But nonetheless, I'll leave him to speak for himself
Mhm.
when Allah removes him, inshallah, from jail, and they can call him from jail too.
Inshallah.
And nonetheless, Sheikh al-Bouti, of course, is not with us anymore. And I don't know who else says this fatwa, but I'm all about being in line
Mhm.
with reality. And
Alhamdulillah.
if you're like this and in the community, I do understand that teaching is gradual. The
Mhm.
Prophet did tell us salah first, then Saum, then zakah. I
Mhm.
do get that, but with the belief that you got to get to the truth eventually. Once you
Mhm.
build up your iman to handle this huge revelation, if you don't know it already, if you're in the Islamic community, you're going to figure it out pretty quickly. But to be told by your religious teachers that we have to live in accord with reality as it is, and Allah created us as males and females, and
Mhm.
to go against that, and you've already went against that and very deeply into the deep end, and I can appreciate how scary it is to have to swim back and change your
Mhm.
whole mindset about things, but you already changed your mind about the afterlife, which is eternal. This life is much shorter. But I
Right.
do appreciate that it will take this person some iman first, building,
Mhm.
and that, but eventually you gotta fix the foundation of things. So
Right.
if I ever
All
I
right.
had to deal within the community, that's the position I would deal with. Eventually, you have
Inshallah.
to get to reality, and
Mhm.
really, if you went that far, you can come back, right? And
Yeah,
I
no,
know
I
there's
agree.
certain things, unfortunately, you can't go back on, right?
Mhm.
A guy who tattooed himself can never, well, he can, but you'll disfigure yourself. But so it's
Mhm.
almost permanent. A lot of permanent problems. The person who is blind is permanent, right? So a lot of people do things that they can't undo, but to
Yes.
at least you got to acknowledge
Mhm.
how God created you and be in line with the creation.
Right. Right.
So
Exactly. All right. Well, got to run, but inshallah, I really appreciated the opportunity, and
no problem.
inshallah, Allah continue to give you tawfiq and
I
success
mean,
in all you do.
I
Assalamu
mean,
alaikum. Assalamu
Jazakallah khair.
alaikum.
Thank you. There is a brother who is sending me some other fatawa on this. Uh, uh, let's hear. بالنسبة للمخصي وأحكامه في الصلاة فلا يجوز له الصلاة. So Sheikh al-Malikiyya in Al-Ahsa, Sheikh Abdul Hamid al-Mubarak, former professor of fiqh at King Faisal, one of our elders in the Maliki Madhhab, said بخصوص لباسهم الإحرام, the transgender, وصلاتهم وغير ذلك من الأحكام فلهم حكم الرجال. Okay, so he's saying it's going to go by their birth. فلا يدخلون مصليات النساء, they will never pray with the women. ولا يصلون بجانبهن, they will not pray next to the women. ويلبسون ما يلبس الرجال في الإحرام, and in إحرام he wears the white garments like a man. ولا خلاف بين العلماء في ذلك. That obviously there is اختلاف, right? So maybe he is not aware of that. Um, قال ابن المنذر, and just for terminology's sake, الخصي عملية إزالة أو تعطيل الوظيفة الجنسية للأعضاء التناسلية, which is الخصيتين لدى الذكور. So the word خصي is the word for the person who has undergone a transgender surgery. So, and he's saying there's no difference of opinion on this. We should say there's no difference. He's aware of. If he's not aware of Shaykh al-Bouti's opinion. But again, Shaykh Abdallah is arguing that Shaykh al-Bouti's opinion is not even relevant because he's saying that Shaykh al-Bouti said complete and complete can't exist. But I personally don't think that that Shaykh al-Bouti actually meant that. I think he meant on the outside, because otherwise you're given a fatwa that's completely irrelevant when your prologue was the relevance of the Sharia. In any event, irrelevant because he's not alive for us to ask him, and may Allah make it easy for him. All right, may Allah give him mercy. قال ابن المنذر way back وأجمعوا أن أحكام الخصي والمجبوب في ستر العورة في الصلاة والإمامة وما يلبسه حال الإحرام وما يصيبه من الميراث. Now, I should correct, the khasi can also be the person whose his maleness has been removed, but he identifies as a man still. It's the eunuch. But and they're going to make a qiyas on the eunuch. And there's no addressing of someone who has mentally identified him as a woman. The way I see it, it's irrelevant how you identify. It's irrelevant that you believe yourself to be one thing. What's relevant is what you are actually made of and how God made you. And you're to behave and live according to that. رأي مختصر في حكم تعيين رجل متحول جنسيا في منصب دعوي. Okay. What is the opinion? A summarized opinion on the ruling of someone who has altered his gender. From Sheikh Abdallah Fad'aq of the Habayib and the Sharif in Mecca. He's a Shafi'i scholar. تغيير الجنس من ذكر سليم إلى أنثى محرم شرعا ولا يغير الأحكام الشرعية المترتبة على الذكورة. It's haram and it does not alter any rulings. الشخص المتحول لا يعتبر أنثى شرعا. He will not, by the law of Sharia, in other words, how he inherits, leading the prayer, where you pray with, etc., who you hang out with, who you marry, it will not alter it. Whether your physical disfigurement of the body that God gave you will not alter the Sharia ruling of how you're going to be classified as male. There are rules for men, there are rules for women. It's not going to alter that. ولا يجوز معاملته كالمرأة. And it is haram in this fatwa, which this is what makes sense. This is haram to treat them that way. Okay. تعيينه في منصب دعوي عام غير جائز. Now, to then hire such a person is not lawful. لما في ذلك من فتنة وتشويش. Well, because he's affirming what is against reality and unlawful. But I guess maybe if he made tawbah and 10 years passed, but he still has some of the effects of that, then maybe it's different. No different than a guy who has got, he had piercings, he had tattoos. That's in his early life. And then he changed. Okay. إخفاء حقيقته عن النساء والمجتمع خداع محرم. To hide his reality from women and from the society is خداع محرم. تقدم مصلحة المجتمع وسلامة عقيدته على خصوصية الفرد. We prioritize the benefit of the larger group, which is the whole community, the whole society, over the individual. Advice. يسحب من المنصب. You should be removed from public-facing Islamic positions. ويرفع الأمر للمجامع الفقهية المختصة, and take it to the fiqh councils. ويوجه برفق, and gently he should be advised to make tawbah. Okay, to make tawbah and to hide his sins. We hide our sins. So again, this is what I agreed with Sheikh Abdallah Ali on, that you got to align yourself with reality. By the way, Sheikh, is Yusuf Ponders here? Right, Maghrib, okay. All right, here's another question. سئلت عن كافر. I was asked about a non-Muslim who changed his gender with hormones and surgery to a female, then entered Islam what must he do? Okay. فسألت أهل الطب واستشرت واطلعت. I asked the medical physicians على بعض ما كتب في هذا فوصلت إلى رأي أظنه صوابا وكتبته في نقاط. Now who is this? Let me ask him. This is Sheikh Abdul Hamid ibn al-Sheikh Mubarak. Again, well, I think we just read this, but let's see. يعامل في الميراث على جنسه الأصلي وهو أنه ذكر. Number one, the person, he has had a transgender surgery, Sheikh Abdallah Hamid, son of Al-Mubarak. He had a transgender surgery, then he entered Islam. Sheikh Abdul Hamid is saying, in inheritance, he's given inheritance based on his birth. عودته بعمليات ونحوها للرجولة خطرها كبير فلا يقدم على ذلك لا يقدم على ذلك. To return back, I was wrong. According to this, when I said you went there, you can come back, he's saying it's extremely dangerous. So he said he's not to be asked to do this. هل يترك الاستمرار في أخذ حبوب الهرمونات الأنثوية؟ أرى أن يستشار الطبيب النفسي مع المختص بهذا الشأن ويعمل برأيهما إن اتفقا وإن اختلفا فللمتحول أن يختار منهما ما يراه أحسن وأرفق به. So I asked, should he continue to take these pills or should he leave off continuing to take the pills? He said, refer to the doctors and see what is the person should choose what is safer for his body. ما هو أرفق به وأحسن. And you should ask the psychiatrist and the doctors. As you can see, once this thing gets messed up, the poor kid committed suicide. Why do you make that decision for him? These parents, this is a type of crime that they did. All right, number 4. لا يحل له التزوج مطلقا إلا إن عاد لحالته الرجولة التامة, which is impossible. He can never marry. I like this fatwa. He can never, because it's fair. How can he marry? On one hand, you're sleeping out with a man with a man. And if he's a man, then he can't perform as a man. So what's the value of marrying a woman to marry a man who cannot have sex with her? He cannot fulfill the natural functions as our guy from... what's his name? The Natural Obligations. Thank you. What's his name? What's the country again? Uganda. Uganda Morning TV. Good morning, Uganda. What he says, the natural obligations. He can't fulfill the natural obligations on one hand, and he's not a female on the other hand, so therefore marriage is no longer allowed for him. Okay? Unless he returns back to his full male feature. Now, this is not possible, though, because you've done the surgery, he's thrown the male body part away. Right? So that's not possible. Number 5. لا يخالط الرجال ولا النساء مخالطة خاصة ولا لصيقة. He does not mingle only with the men nor only with the women, but he can go to, I guess he can go to public things, but لا يخالط الرجال ولا النساء مخالطة خاصة. That means guys hang out, he won't go to. Girls hang out, he won't go to. General masjid fundraiser or a mall or a souk or a market, I guess that's where he can go. Okay. يلبس من اللباس ما يستره عن الإثارة للجنسين. He wears the clothes that would cover, I guess, the temptation from both sides. Al-ithara here means, I guess, temptation from both genders. يصلي بعيدا عن الجنسين. He neither prays with the masjid front or with the men or the women. صار في المسجد أو في بيته. ما عدا الجمعة فيصليها بالمسجد دون مماسة لأحد. He does not touch the men if he prays with, so he prays far away from them or at home, except Jummah, he still has to go to Jummah. Okay. But he'd not touch the men. So he's now in a middle area. So this also is a very safe approach. Wallahu a'lam, he says. كتبه عبد الحميد ibn Shaykh Mubarak. Okay. And then okay, so those are some other fatawa. As I said, as I discussed it earlier, our premise here at Safina Society, nothing but facts. When it comes to dominant opinions in the four madhabs, you share all of them. When it comes to fatawa, you share them, and we should discuss them and use our minds to discuss them, especially those who are learned, as we have done so here. So we'll see what Sheikh Mahmoud comes with. And let us, inshallah, now turn to the next topic. All right, next subject. Kareem, you have anything to add to this? Good. All right, let's go to our next subject, which is the sayings of Prophet Isa ibn Maryam. Our guest is on? All right, there he is. All right, while we bring him on, I'll just read one. Prophet Isa ibn Maryam used to say, as narrated by Abdallah ibn al-Mubarak in Kitab az-Zuhud and Ibn Asakir in as-Sirat and Ghazali in al-Ihya, he used to say, love of paradise and fear of hell beget one patience in adversity and draw the servant of God away from worldly comfort. We're a people, our happiness isn't attained from external things such as wealth and homes and cars. That's not what our happiness is based on. It's maybe a detail. Our happiness, it derives from the heart. It derives from ibadah. The Prophet ﷺ says, whoever devotes himself to ibadah, that means take time out of your day for ibadah, Allah fills your heart with wealth, with ghina, independent, like you don't need anything. You are good as you are. You are feeling amazing as you are. And a person should devote themselves, take time out of the day, just as people take time out of the day for working out for their body, take time out of the day for workout for filling your heart. And qira'at al-Quran, and you look at some of the people who do the khatm, and there's the, the sub'a. The sub'a is 4 juz and a few pages. I think it's 83 pages. Ahmed, do 600 divided by 7 for us. 87, right? 83, 87. So, 8.5. So I actually broke it down. It's up to Surah An-Nisa. I think it's Ayah 57. And then it goes down to different surahs. You can just go to different surahs. It breaks down pretty evenly. The last one is Hujurat. But a sub'a is amazing. The way that it'll just covers you in nur. It's reading about could be for an hour. Might take you an hour. The sub'a. Yeah. All right, let's go now to our guest. Brother Yusuf Ponders, you are on the stream and you got a blue background. Should I go blue too to match or?
Bismillah.
There we
Assalamu
go.
alaikum.
All right, now we match. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. All right, you're doing a great job in dawah. Take it away. What you have been doing lately in the world of dawah.
Barakallahu feek. Yeah, so I've been working with Sapiens Institute, so I'm running the Lighthouse Mentoring. I can't remember if I mentioned it last time. I think we focused on, was it nihilism?
Yeah.
It was a while ago. But yeah, so I've been running the Lighthouse Mentoring service, which works to help people who are suffering from shubuhat or waswas of some kind. So it could be someone that's a born Muslim who begins to doubt for whatever reason, or a non-Muslim that's sort of interested but's got some obstacles, or an ex-Muslim, or a new Muslim. And then we do leadership mentoring as well. So it's people dealing with those categories. So imams and sheikhs and da'is and parents and that kind of stuff. And then the last one is the new Muslim mentoring. So yeah, so at the moment we're just sort of working and trying to raise awareness about the service, that it exists, and yeah, just expand it as much as possible. Alhamdulillah.
Tell me about your meeting with these. Is it all online, by phone, or is it in person?
Both. So we'll do the majority of them. If you book via the website, it's all done via Zoom. And that's the vast majority of them. But as of late, I do a lot sort of face to face, or just on the phone or whatever, not necessarily through Zoom. So it just depends on what's going on. Like there's been a few places where I've gone to their houses because they've lived locally. But as well as that, we also do like courses and things like that. So we'll do drop-ins at Masajid and have little sort of circles where we talk to people and stuff like that. So it's pretty varied. I am wherever I'm needed. Sure, there's some sort of cliche superhero saying about.
But do you guys do you have a center or a physical meeting place?
Yeah, so I've got this office that I'm in, but it's only a little tiny thing. But yeah, people come here sometimes. But again, it's like a very niche area. We're a global service, so we're talking to people pretty much all over the planet. So it's rare that someone can come to the office. We've also got one in London. I'm in the north of England, so I'm in Manchester. Go on.
So you do have offices where people can drive up and meet you and stuff.
Yeah, if they want to make the journey, and it's not too far. Like there was a brother that was in Liverpool who he used to, there's a train station right next to my office. So he made the trip here from Liverpool to just have regular meetings with me once every now and then.
You're in Manchester.
Yeah, North Manchester.
So what about a lot of the we get this vibe that the soccer hooligans, football hooligans have a culture there that it's almost crusader like. The Crusaders were hooligans too. These were I think they were a bunch of bums in the beginning. But
yeah, well they were promised their sins would be forgiven. I think most of them were criminals, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. Well, they ransacked their own brethren in Byzantium, in Constantinople. They totally ransacked that place.
Yeah, and I think they even caused havoc in Europe on the way there before they even got to Byzantine. Yeah, it was a bit. But yeah, no. To be honest, I'm in love with Manchester in particular. So I know that it does have a bad reputation, but I don't really experience it. Even where I am, Bolton in particular, has got a bit of a bad reputation. But alhamdulillah, I'm never exposed to the ugly underbelly anymore.
Yeah, so it's not popular, this idea of this whole hatred of Islam and hatred of Pakistanis and all that.
It depends where you go. I would say the thing is with social media at the moment, what goes viral is what causes people anxiety, and the algorithms sort of hooked into what makes you feel the most. And so I think we get a sort of distorted view of the world. It's not that it's not a growing problem, because it is. Like, I don't know if you saw recently in the UK in particular, there was the Tommy Robinson rally, which was like right outside of Parliament building.
Let's get his real name. What's his real name?
Stephen Yaxley Lennon, I think.
He's Jewish, right?
It's a good question. I don't know.
He's definitely working for Israel, that's for sure.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he's a Zionist.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon.
Yeah.
But he is not Jewish. Well, I don't know. Yaxley?
He might have some sort of background, yeah.
What is that? What is Yaxley? But he's works for Israel, basically. So
he's openly a Zionist, but he's becoming, he's in the US at the moment as well, I think, or he was recently,
really?
talking to your government.
He's not banned.
Say again?
He's not banned from the US.
No, he's been invited.
Mm.
He's been invited. During the rally in London, he had Elon Musk showing up. He had the Polish Prime Minister turning up. So like he's become very normalized now. So there is a growing problem.
Peddled him in. Mm.
Yeah, pretty much. But he's openly a Zionist. He's been there. He's done talks there. He's I think it's been made quite clear that he's funded by Zionists. And he himself has said that. Well, he said when it kicked off, he didn't, but he said he would, if there was a war, he would go and fight on the front lines with them. Mm-hmm. So he's like full swing in favor of them, and he's definitely his mission, or he's making it his mission, to really push an anti-Islamic narrative, and it is becoming more popular. But I don't. A part of it makes me wonder because I don't necessarily experience it. And I don't know if it's because I can blend. I think people look at me and they just think I'm some sort of hippie Viking guy. So maybe I just, I'm protected from the bad end of it. But I'm openly a Muslim. I talk to people about it. I don't hide it. And yeah, it's trying to find that sort of where the truth lies, to what degree it's sort of overrepresented in the media and made to seem like a bigger problem because that's what sells and that's what goes viral. And the reality of it, I think most people, even the ones that do harbor anti-Islamic sentiments, for the most part, I think they're more than capable of still interacting with and engaging with the Muslim community and it not becoming necessarily toxic. Yeah. Like I've got people that are quite anti-Islam, even within my own family. But it never crops up or causes problems for me. And I'm talking like relatively close as well. So,
well, I think that's how the deen spreads is through human beings that interact in a certain way that makes people not want to hate what's connected to them.
Yeah. Well, but this is the weird thing as well, because the people that I do have connection, I've got a really good relationship with them. And like, it's never spoken, but I know because, like, for example, like other people I know have access to their social media, so they can see what they post and things like that. Whereas I'm not on it. So I don't see any of that. So I know what they say publicly on these public forums. But it's never said to me.
Yeah. And people change, that's the thing in Islam. If anything, when we study the seerah, it's you see how radically people change.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, and a big part of that is interactions, and it's I think sometimes we can be our own worst enemy. Yeah. And because there was in Bolton in particular, there was a rally there, like a quote unquote far right rally, and me and my friend were both reverts, and we went there to just go and like scout the area, see what was going on, and because we were white and there was lots of bearded men there anyway, we were able to just sort of blend in with them, and I wanted to sort of like sort of earwig and listen to what the conversation were in those sort of circles. And it was relatively calm in the beginning. And then what happened was a bunch of Muslim youths, all of them dressed in black, sort of ran in. And there was a police cordon in the middle, in between it. And the moment they arrived, they went straight in with sort of chanting and shouting, and then it became like incredibly aggressive because of the tension that was caused in the presence. And obviously the things that the far right represent, I don't agree with in the slightest. And I'm not a friend of their community in any way. I'm not an ally of them. I stand with the Muslims, so I can understand the frustration. But this sort of overly aggressive, and a lot of it is just posturing, because it's not like it was there for an actual fight. It wasn't going to happen. There were too many police there. It was like, it felt more like a performance. And the issue is I think it acts as more of an obstacle, to dawah in particular. Like there's no effort to try to have this conversation. Like even if you look at, you mentioned the seerah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the way like he spoke about, was it Khalid ibn Walid? Someone who was,
you're talking about Abu Jahl's son Ikrimah. Don't speak bad about Abu Jahl. Is that one?
Because I can't remember which
Ikrimah's coming.
So I remember it was, it may have been both. I don't know why I've got it in my head. It's Khalid ibn Walid, but it was someone that was fighting against the Muslims, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam kept sort of praising his intelligence, and was sort of waiting for him to join the Muslims. And it may have been the Sahabi you mentioned, or it may have been Khalid ibn Walid. I can't remember the exact individual, but it was a case of like, you know, they were openly fighting one another. But the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam would try to uphold this particular etiquette, which was inviting to those that he was engaging with.
Do you feel? Sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, go on.
I was going to say, do you feel that there is an in with these guys?
Yeah, there's overlap, because this is the way they've got it in their head that we're allied with the left wing, and the issue is there's a huge problem with lumping everyone in that says they're Muslim as being Muslim, and it's all part of this, like Islam becomes whatever every Muslim says.
Yeah.
And it becomes a bit of a contradiction at that point, because you've got obviously very sort of liberalized Muslims who are more secular than anything, and they're pandering to liberalism to the degree that they could. And you were sort of touching on it in the previous conversation with the Shaykh that you had on a moment ago, where there is an anxiety that our community has, and they don't want to. They don't want to feel that tension with the community that they find themselves in. And so when these things present themselves, they can be overly submissive to that mentality, and they'll just sort of like agree with it.
Yeah.
And when obviously non-Muslims are looking at that, they can confuse that as that's what the Muslims have been told to do according to Islam. And it's not. We're like, you know, those on Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, they're concerned with the Sharia. Yeah. They're concerned with obeying Allah and obeying the Messenger, and not watering or changing the religion, because you're aware of the issues related to that, and the danger of it, especially when it comes to the Akhirah. Like we are advising them not to do that, but that's getting missed in the chaos of all of this, and even the way that the Muslims are presented in the media is very skewed. There's some articles released that sort of explored it, and they're very selective with who they try to bring on to represent the Muslims, and it's usually the fringe characters that are very minority in terms of their opinions. They'll bring them on. Like there's was it Anjem Chowdhury, for example? Yeah. He was a very minor. Say again.
I think there are forces that are planting the most extreme Muslims and pitting them against who I just sort of insultingly called the soccer hooligans and the white nationalists.
Yeah.
They're trying to foment drama and fitna.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I definitely think there's like, if you think in terms of like, they have the money and they have the means to be able to do so, it's just like a big chess game for certain characters in the world, isn't it? So so long
even
as you
the people
sort of sow discord.
The people who you said, the Muslims who bum rushed the white nationalist march, could they have been plants?
So
both
there
sides
may have
led
been
with plants.
Yeah. So there may have been one or two. The thing is there is, especially with young men, they do feel like they're constantly on the back foot. So when they get together, they feel safe in that. And they're sort of, because they're expecting to meet football hooligans, They already had this anticipation that that's what they're going to find. They're going to find people that want to fight, and so they go there ready to defend their community to a certain degree, even if the community isn't there and the community is not necessarily getting attacked. It's just people stood around saying things, and I think that these things ended up getting WhatsApped, and people say, "Oh, you know, we're all meeting here. There's a thingy rally here. We're all going," and there's an excitement about that. And it's sort of, again, it touches kind of on the conversation last time about this sort of prevailing nihilism and meaninglessness. A lot of them are not necessarily practicing. Like when I went among there, because I switched sides. When I switched sides, the police got dead anxious as well, and they were like warning me to enter. But when I entered, I was fine, alhamdulillah. And I wasn't afraid of being among them. But what I did notice is that there was a lot of things happening even within the Muslim circles that you just should not be tolerated at all within Muslim circles. There was certain language that was being used, certain I'll just say smells that were floating about that made it quite clear that there was other things happening in that. There was some people that did strike me as potentially agitators that would say very extreme things. And it's like, what are you doing? What are you And like there was one point, there was one gentleman, he did say something, I had to confront him. But it was like I was the only one, although there was maybe one or two of us that was trying to like calm down these certain agitators. But it struck me as the vast majority of them are young men that are not practicing. And they're probably feeling a little bit lost. And they're probably feeling this sort of need to feel meaning. And this was like an opportunity for them to sort of, I don't know, feel a bit of excitement or sort of prove themselves in some way.
It's attack on Wembley syndrome.
Yeah.
You know about the attack on Wembley?
Say that again, sorry?
I think it was 2021 or 2022. It was England, Italy final, Euro Cup in Wembley. And all of a sudden, all these basically bored young guys went to the Wembley area at around like 9 a.m., 10 a.m. And the game's at 8. And the drinking got so crazy and the hooliganism got so crazy that it was they called the documentary Attack on Wembley. And it was just basically guys with nothing to do and just drinking and going crazy. Right?
Yeah.
And I personally believe that with these marches like Tommy Robinson that he starts, and then the response, that the leadership, the instigation is by Mossad plants. And that's what I say.
It would not surprise me if that became apparent.
A feeling is in logic, a feeling is a shu'ur, is a hypothesis that you think is true, but you still haven't gathered the evidence to present it as a case, as a theory, a nadariya. But based on what, forget the little hooligan march. I mean, wars they've started, right?
Yeah.
Entire wars they have instigated.
Yeah, by presenting a feigned enemy.
Correct.
Like false flag attacks. There's enough information to show that has happened on massive scale with major events. Never mind like on a smaller scale, and it would be much easier to do smaller scale as well. And if you just did it here and there and you did it as often as possible, and I think as well, in some cases you wouldn't even need to use plants. You just need to sort of be the shaitan in someone's ear whispering, you know, it'd be good if you went and did this, and that'd really show them, and you know, you've seen these sort of bot farms now as well on social media, like where you could literally just pay someone a few grand and just say, just propagate this message by varying people of varying looking backgrounds, and just get them to absolutely swamp these particular areas of the social network, and make it look like something's happening. And then it's a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy. Like everyone, you've got a load of bots saying this is happening, we're going to go here, we're going to go here, we're going to go here, and then people don't want to miss out on that. And so they go and they join, and then what you have is you have a lot of people joining, and it's, oh wow, there are a lot of people here. So these things can definitely be manipulated, and I do get a sense of that as well on both sides. Although a big part of it, I think, is just we need to work on communicating, and we need to work on our own and on those outside. And I think a lot of the time we sort of get bogged down on sort of on I don't want to say useless necessarily, but we get bogged down on other things that are not fundamental. Like, you know, it's difficult to pinpoint where the exact problem lies, but we need to work on sort of instilling and inspiring our youth, and like our imams and our leaders need to be inspiring. And I've been into too many masjid where that's just not the case. You have very boring khutbas that are almost drony, often in a language that the majority of the community don't understand. Like the youth, especially in third, fourth generation, don't necessarily speak the language that their grandparents did. And you can see them. They're all like, you're looking around, a lot of the youth are sort of nodding off, they're talking to each other, they're on their phones. They're not engaged. The topics are not important to them, whatever's being brought up. And the person that's putting it forward isn't inspiring themselves. And I think that's a big part of the problem, is we need to really work on figuring that out, and figuring that this is important. You do need to inspire the youth. You need to get them to see that Islam is true, Islam is worth defending, and that you are an ambassador, and getting them to see themselves as ambassadors, whether they recognize it or not. They are, like, when they go out and about, if they're seen as Muslim, then their actions have an impact on the community as a large. And if they're recorded doing something, that will get it will get turned into a short, it will get popped on social media and Facebook and TikTok, and it will float around these circles as evidence for their negative opinion of us. And I think this is probably one of the most important things we need to really work on right now, is being good ambassadors.
That's a great point. And I had somebody approach me and say, and broach the topic of caricatures. So if you don't mingle with certain groups, then the internet sort of poses for that group a caricature.
Yeah.
And we have on one hand, like, the blue-haired septum ring liberal, and the soccer, or what you would call football hooligan on the other side, and then like the Taliban Muslim on the other side. But I think that's actually, I retract those characterizations, because I'm the biggest perpetrator of those characterizations, right? So I had to retire my character of the blue-haired liberal, because, as you just said, there's an overlap now between Muslims and these groups that took place over the past 10 years without us realizing. And through converts on one hand, like yourself, but also there are Muslim who overlap with the so-called blue-haired liberals, which is a caricature that I had to retire. But because now there's overlap now. There's conversations happening now. Yeah. And they're not like a foreign entity anymore, as it used to be, like so far from our minds, so fringe. But there's actually overlap now. And there's ability to have conversations with these types of people. And there are many of them who took Shahada. One person told me that at a Palestine rally, 40 leftist liberals fighting for Palestine took the Shahada. 40. That's an insane number in one day. Yeah. Right? So we have to readjust to the waqa, the reality on the street right now, is that it's no longer like the time where you could just pinpoint a caricature and accept the social media or the algorithm representation of them. And we don't like that for ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
So I guess now you're telling me, based on what you're telling me, I have to retract the soccer hooligan caricature too.
Because the thing is because even some of them, they can be so, like, because that caricature, that a lot of that is my family. Those are the people.
The poor brother, man.
No. It's not. I get it. I'm not insulted by it. I understand it. But these are people that I am related to. I grew up with. Like, I'm from where they're from.
Yeah.
And I know them intimately. And they used to try to take, like, I'm just, me personally, I never got into football. I was more of a people watcher. So my dad's family are from Glasgow in Scotland, and they're big Celtic supporters.
Wait, what
And
support?
so
What sport is that?
football.
No, you said you watch something else.
I don't watch. I don't like sports.
Oh, you don't watch. Okay.
No, I prefer things like chess, or like I prefer doing things. I don't mind playing a sport. I don't like watching it though. It bores
Oh, I
me.
see. Okay.
But like, and so they used to take me because they're all like, my brother, for example, he's a massive Arsenal fan. And so
From
he would get
Manchester.
very, yeah. So
That's
we were
heresy,
raised
though,
as,
for you guys.
but we were raised as Celtic fans. We were never Manchester United
What city
fans
are
anyway.
they?
Celtic's Glasgow.
Okay. Well, that's
So
a
there's
tiny
two-
little city. That's right.
Say again.
Isn't Glasgow some tiny little city that's not really critical?
Glasgow's that's probably the second biggest city in Scotland, or one of them. There's
Oh,
three
it's
main
Scotland.
cities
It's
in
not
Scotland.
even England.
No,
Okay.
it's not even England. Well, my family
Okay.
are Scottish. So on my
you're
dad's side,
Scottish.
and my mum's side, they're Polish.
Okay.
But they're like Celtic and Rangers are huge, even outside of Scotland. They're massive in Ireland as well, and it's because it represents the Christian versus Protestant divide.
You're kidding.
No, because the Catholics were the Celtic supporters,
Yeah.
and Rangers are the Protestant.
You're kidding me. It's on religious
no.
lines?
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
And to the degree that in Ireland, especially because of the divide, it was a sign of whether or not you were a unionist or a part of the
Capitalist.
in favor of the British,
Oh, I see.
because the British are Protestant, and so
Yeah.
if you the IRA were big on the Celtic, for
Yeah.
example, and if you wore a Celtic t-shirt and walked into a Protestant area, you could get badly hurt. So they're very, very passionate.
So
like,
it represented
in particular.
religion and class too. Working class versus
Yeah.
elites.
It could have been as well. But even then, like, the Protestant could be working class too.
Okay. Yeah.
Because there was a lot of working class. So there is an element of sort of rebellion against the British state there. But the main point I'm sort of making by mentioning them is they're very passionate. Like, and when they used to take me to these games, and I couldn't, like, if they scored a goal, you could see on the face of my family, they were very invested in the game. They were very, they took ownership of the goal almost, like they themselves had scored it, and they'd become a part of this team. And it was like, we've done it, like they're on the pitch with them.
And it'll affect the rest of their day, right? If not week.
Yeah. And if they did well, they'd be super happy and they'd all be ecstatic. And if it did badly, they'd all be depressed. And like, I couldn't care. Like, it didn't affect me at all. But I loved watching them, and I loved like seeing the crowds. I don't know what it was, but it was very interesting to watch them. But like, they can be so full of love, and they can be very passionate, and they can be very ready to defend. Like, they can be very loyal. And like, if these type of people, they become Muslims, there's a lot of really good qualities and traits that they could bring over.
Yep.
And there's a lot that they really agree with us on. Like, for example, the whole grooming gang thing. They've got this idea in their head that this is as the result of Islam, and it's like, and you hear them say things. It's like, listen, the things that you're saying, if Islam was in force in that area, there's no way they could have ever have done any of the things that they did. They'd have gotten lashed just for drinking alcohol. They'd have received very harsh punishments. There's no intermingling. We're not even allowed to shake the hands of the opposite gender. With like, oh, look at them. So like, if that's enforced on a communal level, you're not going to have these situations arise. Zina is not permissible at all. If any of these guys are married, the consequence for that is extreme. And if you add everything, dealing in drugs, so on and so forth, like all of that together, they would get probably with all of it, if you took everything that they did into account, they would probably get capital punishment, which is the exact
rape in some jurist account is a capital crime.
Yeah. And you'd get multiple, like, because of everything they're doing, because they were also dealing in heavy drugs. And in Muslim countries, if you get found with weed, you could get a very harsh punishment. And they're dealing in much more extreme things. So, like, and this is the thing. So it's like, it's trying to get them to understand that the things that they say sometimes can be very Islamic, and they just don't realize it. And they're at the same time saying, oh, we're getting the Sharia here. While they're complaining about the way that their own government deals with these issues, where had you let us deal with our own community, they'd have probably cheered us on for like the way we would have handled that and these groups. And again, it's again that passion. Like, if that was transferred into being Muslim, there's a lot of good that can come from that, and I have hope for them. I do see there is this rising problem, and there are these growing tensions, and a lot of it is fueled just by the modern predicament of boredom, social media, binging, streaming, games, all of that crap, and they have a lot of leisure time, and they're in this sort of paradox where they've got a lot of leisure. They're not having to struggle in the sense of like fighting their neighbors for a sandwich. Like, they're all satiated. They have food and drinking water. We drink from our taps. Like, we're all right. We're not, we've got roofs over our head. It's hard to like find someone that's starving in the UK. We've got more of a problem. I think it's the same in the US. More a problem with obesity. More people die because of eating too much than they do too little here. And so, but at the same time, we're struggling still. Like, there's weird documentaries where you'll see people talking about how hard life is, and they've got a big flat screen TV on the wall, they've got Gucci glasses, they've got an iPhone, they're overweight, and it's like, where's how, like, what is it? And they're talking about not getting enough money, but it's like, if you didn't have enough money to survive, you'd sell your phone. You would sell. Desperation pushes you into these circumstances where you get rid of these luxury items, which is what they are. Like, it's not a living necessity to have a TV or the latest iPhone or Gucci glasses. Like, these things are what they are. They're luxuries. They're unnecessary extras. And I think and it's a growing phenomena of people just having more and more liberty time. Their basic needs are met to a certain degree, and they've got a lot of exposure to the extremes of the internet, and it's just fueling people with anger. Like, even just the way the algorithm, you watch one thing, you comment on it, you like it, and then it's going to show you another thing. And it's pushing what you're engaging with. And if you get angry every time you see Muslims doing something stupid, and every time you see a Muslim doing something stupid, you comment, those rapscallions, or whatever language they use. Then the algorithm's like, oh, this is engagement. Let's push more of that out, because that engagement equals profit for them. And like, we are their product. We are what they sell to advertisers. And so they've invested a lot of money in manipulating users into continuing to using their app. And there's a huge problem there in the way that algorithm pushes these things. It's like, how many really good YouTubers do you see where they don't get views, they don't go viral, yet the content is beautiful. Like, the things that they say are amazing. They're like, everything that falls out of their mouth is a gem, but it doesn't make people feel anger or extreme ecstasy. It makes them content and reflective, and that's not something that engages, you see, in the same way that controversial content does.
The good stuff, it usually has to pass through the brain first, and then it could you have to read it, ponder it, and anger and temptation goes straight to the emotion.
Yeah.
It's cheaper, it's easier. And
Yeah.
so, or humor also straight. So those are the things that go, that catch on faster. And I think the only solution, the only way out of these kinds of things, I think, is your interaction with your family, because that's who you see all the time. Where else are you going to see, where else is a common place besides work and home, that you're gonna interact with your community? So I guess if every convert interacted well with their family over this course of 20 years, there's going to be a significant change for sure, guaranteed almost.
Yeah. No, not just their family. Like there's a brother in Bolton. He's very, very well known. He's massive in Dawah. So he's involved in the Dawah quite a lot. But not on social media. Like he's face to face, person to person. They get a lot of shahadas. It's like nearly every week they're posting about someone taking shahada. But it's not being recorded. It's not turned into clickbait. It's not monetized. It's just genuine, sincere, one-to-one conversations with people that feel like they need help, and that conversation sparks and results in some good stuff. He also works in community work, so he runs the local soup kitchen, and he's engaging with people that are struggling or do have problems, and he provides for them, and that, I think, stuff like that provides a massive impact for the people that are engaging with him. No, because he's openly Muslim. People know he's a Muslim.
Yeah.
And he's dealing mostly with non-Muslims from, the struggling like backgrounds, and they're usually drug addicted and things like that. And there's all these other problems that they have, but he treats them well. Like he looks after them. He shows genuine concern for their well-being. And that, I think, plays a massive role, and we are all completely capable of that. But I think the problem is this: people are afraid of tension, people are afraid of anxiety, people are afraid of like having to sort of face that, and it requires a certain level of bravery. And I think the social media scene has sort of robbed us of that ability to confront that anxiety face to face. It's much easier to do it from behind a keyboard, and I think that also allows people to vent. And once they've vented enough online from the safety of anonymity behind a keyboard, it robs them of their need to fulfill that in real life as well. Yeah. So it's like a compound problem that's just,
I think that smoke and mirrors, it'll never override reality. And the more we physically engage and interact with people one-to-one, and continue to live a life without khamr, without alcohol, without gambling, without zina, and populate through marriage, and raise kids who also are not on zina and read the Quran and etc., and are grounded, the gap is going to become very apparent on which way of living works.
The quality of life is like there's documentaries on it now at the moment where they've gone to Blackburn, which is quite local. It's about 40 minutes north of Bolton. And it's an American guy who's just heard a lot about Blackburn, and so he's gone to sort of interview everyone. And to begin with, he interviews all the non-Muslims, and there's a pattern. Like the non-Muslims seem very pessimistic about their town. When he asked them what's wrong, their metric revolves around how many pubs have closed. And all the pubs are closing, the town's gone to crap. It used to be amazing, and the reason it used to be amazing is because it used to be dead lively. This is where everyone used to come to drink, and everything revolves around khamr for them, and the way that they're saying, comparing the good times to the bad times. No one goes there anymore. And a part of that is because the Muslims have moved in there quite a lot, and there's many Muslims in Blackburn, and that's not a market that they dabble in. They don't get involved in it. And if you don't cater to the market, then your business is going to go under. And they didn't evolve, they didn't adapt, and they try to sell things to people. It's like trying to sell snow to Eskimos, isn't it? Or sand to the Arabs. It's just, we don't need that. We've got, you know, it's not something we want, or it's not something that we you know, need to have access to. And so they collapse. And but there's a pessimism and there's a sadness. And there was another common thing is drug or alcohol abuse within that community. Like a lot of people seem, especially in the working class, to have these issues related to that. And then they went to the Muslim community, and there was a lot more positive. There was a lot more optimism, and there was a lot more wealth, and there was a lot more community-centered spirit, like where everyone knew everyone.
Yeah,
people were concerned about their neighbors. There was a strong sense of the family unit, where it was like people had a clear sense of what their roles were. Whereas on the other side, with the non-Muslim communities, although there's always exceptions to the rule, there was a lot of chaos. There was a lot of like, it's not really clear. You've got mum and dad both working full-time jobs, and they're both exhausted, and then they come home to another full-time job, and then they spend all their time debating about whose turn it is to do the next thing.
Yep.
And they don't really get to see their kids. The kids are in school, and all that parenting is being offloaded to other people. And like it's again, there's always exceptions to the rules. So this isn't a blanket state case for every non-Muslim family, and the opposite isn't a blanket state case for every Muslim family either. Because especially further down the line, the more generations you go into it, the more Muslims do seem to start to incline towards that as well. So we do have this problem too, but not to the same degree that they have. And a part of that is that even when they do, quote unquote, secularize a little, there's still little strings that they hold on to, like don't eat bacon. Like you'll see some Muslims they'll do loads of stuff, but they won't eat bacon. They won't go near alcohol. They won't go near places where like the smell of alcohol is even present.
And things change
like
when they have
communal
kids.
Anxiety. Say again.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but things change when people have kids. They start going to the masjid more because they have to take their kids to Sunday school or to memorize the Quran or something.
Yeah. And I've noticed that as well, where before they've had kids, they've dabbled in that environment. They've seen firsthand what it does to their friends and to themselves if they dabble in it too much. And then when they have kids, they've seen the other side. Like, for example, even just funerals. I had to go to a lot of funerals growing up with my non-Muslim family. My dad passed away when I was 9. A year later, my dad died because of heroin overdose. His brother, my uncle, died a year later because of cider, alcohol overdose. His liver just packed in. I had friends that, basically there was a lot of people, long story short, around me that were suffering from these things. And you would go to a funeral within the non-Muslim environment, and it's like you'd bury the person, everyone would get dead sad, and then they would go and party. They would go and drink. At one of the funerals, it was my auntie's. They went into her house. They cremated her, and they went into the house, and the first thing they started doing was taking heavy drugs. I mean, like cocaine. Some of them were taking pills. They were all drinking, and within a few hours, they were all trying to murder each other. Like literally, one cousin had gotten a knife and he was trying to stab the other cousin because they were all off their heads.
Yeah,
and I've had to try and like rip this apart, and then I've spent the whole night trying to deal with someone that's heavily under the influence of a combination of God knows what, who's not seeing straight, will not go to sleep. And I'm sober. Like I can't deal with this. I've had to sit in a car outside of the house because I can't go into these environments. It's just too much. But it's toxic. It's not a remembrance of the person that's been lost. It's a disrespect of the home that they just died in. And it was completely different. And that was, again, there's always exceptions to the rule, but it's common enough to that you should, if you're in that community, recognize this is a problem.
Yeah.
This isn't normal. Like if you've not had it yourself, you know someone who has. And then I would go to Muslim funerals, and it was completely different. It was like a different world. There's more people in this house now. Like there's people from all over the community coming to give their respects. Everyone's walking in the house. Everyone's eating together. There's no alcohol. There's no foul language. Everyone's very somber and reflecting on the person that's been lost, on making dua for them, on praying to Allah, and to reflecting on how they themselves will one day die. And it's like it's very it like it the whole function of the funeral within a Muslim environment is to get you to reflect on how you're going to be in that grave too one day. And it's very reflective, it's very impactful, and because of the purity of it, because there's no alcohol, it's very easy to allow yourself to go into that state without going into an extreme emotion. Whereas when you have drugs and alcohol mixed into that, those emotions, when they flare, they can become very, very extreme. And that's where it becomes dangerous. And you see, I saw that firsthand. I saw that firsthand, and seeing the difference between these two different things, because it's so hard. I would say, if not impossible, to go to a non-Muslim funeral and the after party, quote unquote, there's not alcohol. It's really, really, really difficult to find one that they don't mix that. And especially if you come from, I don't know, maybe it's more of a class thing, but like my family are not wealthy. They're all working class. You know, that there's no one rich. But drugs like seems to be almost, at least within my own family and my own community, like a very common thing, where it's so normalized that people are not questioning it. Like even when I found out that someone in my family was doing a particular drug, it upset me because my dad had passed away because of drugs, and I didn't see it as distinct. And they didn't realize it was going to upset me because it was so normal to them. It's maddening. And I think people are recognizing that, and that the distinction between these two environments. And like you said, the more time passes, and the more, if we can really, really just like knuckle down as a community and focus on creating strong, brave, healthy, inspiring environments, that interaction with them, if we can be patient as well and not jump to these caricatures, which is hard, because I do it as well. So it's, you know, it's not easy. But if we can do that and try to maintain a conversation with them and to offer them kindness and to be inviting, they'll want to come into our house. They'll want to join us. And the hadith of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're upon the deen of your friend, or the other one about the oud seller and the blacksmith. Like if you bring one person in and he's surrounded by oud sellers and he notices no one here is swearing, he'll stop swearing among you. He'll recognize it's awkward and he'll give it up while he's with you. If he notices no one is drinking, he's not going to start saying, "Oh, do you mind if I have a bevy?" It's going to be weird because no one else is. And like just sort of creating that environment where you can pull these people in and just show them the difference between night and day. Like I think it's massively important. But we need to work again on that, on being ambassadors, on being inspiring, on showcasing the beauty of Islam and the deen when it's practiced as a community.
I think we have a lot of timidness of inviting non-Muslims into our social circles.
Yes.
You know, we just have a timidness to it. We just don't know what to expect. We don't know if they're gonna like it. But truth is that a lot of people would really appreciate just an invitation and food.
Yeah.
I mean, if you invited me to a place and I have no need for food, but someone invites me out and offers good food, I'm going to be happy, right? It's just human nature. If you get the biggest millionaire in the world and you sit him down and you give him a nice gift that's like $5,000 and he's already got billions, he's still going to be happy. It's going to affect him. We underestimate how little it takes to make people happy. And that in dawah, those gestures they go further than arguments, further than information, because
Yeah.
that is a piece of information. That's the fruit of this religion. You're giving me the fruit. You not have to tell me what the trunk is made of, how far the roots are. We oftentimes talk about Islam like that. Oh, this tree of Islam, the roots are so deep, it's so stable, the trunk is so vast, the branches are so flexible. But instead of all that talk, just give the person a fruit from the tree.
Yeah, let them enjoy the shade.
Yeah, exactly. Let them enjoy the shade of the tree, the benefit of the tree, and forget the theory about what the tree's made of. And that should speak for itself. I think that's the way forward in dawah. I'm actually, year after year, I'm inclined less and less to rhetoric and arguments. And I'm inclined more and more to reality, which is the haqq that's happening in the world, the waqa that's happening in the world, which is good attitude, much more forgiving attitude and flexible attitude with people.
Yeah.
You know, theory makes you the opposite. Theory actually makes you almost more negative, I would say. Is theory, it's about like what's right and wrong is pretty clear. So that actually has a negative, I think it actually has in many ways a negative impact on people's personality. Is if you go around studying cars, you can go out in the street and you could tell whose car is messed up and needs fixing. If you spend all day on theology, when you walk in the street, that's a heretic, that's an innovator, that's a kafir, that's a mushrik, this is a kitabi, right? This person's testimony won't be accepted. Marriage to this person is invalid. Marriage to this person is valid but sinful. You can't live like this, right? You cannot live. You're not going to be effective in da'wah. And what does Allah put us on the earth for? Kuntum khayra ummatin ukhrijat linnas. You're the best nation that has been brought out to people. That means you have to come out to the people. That means you're not the rabbis in the midrash who are studying for themselves only. And that is a reality of Muslims out of fear. Like we have to have husn al-dhan with the Muslims too. They're just afraid. They just don't know what to expect.
Yeah.
We've seen nothing but violence coming from the direction of Europe and now America for how many decades, if not centuries now, starting with Napoleon. So the psychology is that negative things are going to happen when we interact with these types of people. So we have to give them husn al-dhan too, that they closed up around themselves.
Yeah.
But we're now in another generation.
Yeah,
right?
and that's also the thing that that makes us distinct from the Jews as well. Because if you look at who the Jews were supposed to be, they were supposed to be a light for the nation.
Yeah.
Or the nations, a light for the world, a guidance for the people.
Yeah.
And if you look at what the prophets were doing, even in their own books, what were they doing? They weren't a closed off community that didn't engage with people outside of the community. And you know, they weren't completely insular. No, the prophets, they went to, in many cases, the worst of mankind.
Yep.
And those interactions were very severe in some cases, very, very awkward in other cases. And they called them to worship one God. And they were able to put themselves in awkward situations and just be able to live in that awkwardness and like just deal with it. Let it be awkward and be there while it's awkward. And what happened with the Jews at some point, they just stopped doing that.
Yeah.
They stopped being a guide for the nations. They stopped giving dawah. They don't find me a Jewish, I've said this a few times recently, but find me a Jewish dawah stall. You don't see them.
Or charity house or soup kitchen.
Yeah.
Is there?
Yeah.
Kadeem, could you look up Jewish soup kitchen that serves the goy, not goy slop, actual food? Right.
But they were supposed to, like Moses with Pharaoh. Yeah, the worst of mankind.
Yep.
And he went there, and it wasn't as if Moses wasn't an anxious person. His tongue would get tied. He had the best dua about speech is from him, because his tongue used to get tied. Which for anyone who's ever had their tongue tied in a public setting, especially if you're talking to a quote unquote a very important person, that's very awkward. And I think this is you sort of learn it a bit if you become a public speaker to some degree. And maybe you could share this experience where you sort of learn to be okay with awkward situations.
Yeah.
And you learn to sort of just let it be awkward. It's okay. And I've noticed there's a lot of people that can't do that.
Yep.
Like if there's a public interaction, even like not necessarily in like a public speech setting where you're the speaker in front of people, but even just walking around like the town center, and then someone comes up to you and they're quite an awkward person, and they don't necessarily have social intelligence, and they don't know how to behave in a public setting with strangers.
Mm-hmm.
That interaction can throw people off. And that there is a select few, like my mum in particular is very, very good at like making awkward situations seem normal. And like in a situation where most people would be like crumbling with cringe,
Mm-hmm.
my mum can just engage with that person.
She should have went into
talk
sales.
to them
then.
as well. She used to work as a waitress.
Okay.
So
that's
but
what she interacts with like 25 people a day.
Yeah.
More.
Yeah. It's just socializing, learning to socialize, engaging with people, getting out there. And like, but like face to face, like seeing people, learning to use your body language, your facial expressions. And like, have you heard, what's it called? The Gen Z stare?
What is that?
The Gen Z stare, when you talk to someone and they have like no expression on their face. It's like they look at you the same way they look at their phone screen.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean.
So like it's usually with sort of socially awkward teenagers that don't know how to interact with humans.
They only know how to like. Really solves that. Masjid life really solves that.
Yeah.
Because you have to walk in, and just to pray Aisha, you may make eye contact with 10 people, minimum, and not let alone conversations, let alone physical touch. I think Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad was just talking about the amount of physical touch in Muslim life. And even that's not even like really part of our deen. Handshaking and hugging, I don't think that it's, well, there are hadith about musafaha, handshaking. But you actually end up touching so many different people. Probably good for your health too, because you have mass.
No, it is definitely. And you can sort of see as well in the non-Muslim communities, they're moving away from like that, there's the intimacy of friendship, like the closeness of brothers.
Yeah.
Like where like you can, like when you see someone and you have like a good brotherly love for them, you love them for the sake of Allah, and you cuddle them, and it's a strong cuddle.
Yep.
And they don't let go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, because you love them, it's okay.
Yeah.
So you'll hold, and it like, and there's an awkwardness that some people have where they don't like that prolonged contact, and you can see them sort of reclusing away from the cuddle to the handshake to just the fisty, like just that. It's just like one quick.
Yep.
That's all of the contact you're gonna get from me is just a little. Or even now after COVID, it became more popular to just do an elbow. Like you're not even gonna get my hand. I want as little contact with humans as possible.
Yep.
And again, I think that again is probably motivating this issue. And as you say, the central nature of the masjid, of engaging with people, and of shaking hands, of cuddling, these things help that human need to connect, and these really do not do the job.
Well, I mean, one of the proofs that a theory is true is its survivability. So that's one of the things that indicates that something is true. Like, will it be around in 100 years? Will it be around in 200 years? That's not the argument for why it's true. That's an indicator of truth, is that it's going to be around for another 100 years, going to be around for another 200 years. And that's one of the things. I was at Hajj way back, and way back in Hajj before COVID, it's so loud, and there are so many illegal Hujjaj, and the cops are going around Mina telling them to clear the streets because they don't want stampedes. There's sirens going on, and I thought to myself, this must have been what it sounded like in like World War I or World War II or something, which got me going back in history. Like, what was Hajj like in 1900? What was it like in around 19 1939 when the World War II was going on. And then it got my mind drifting to that whatever it was like, we're doing the exact same thing. And 100 years passed, and all those empires are gone, but the Hajj is still here. And it just got me thinking to how empires really just come and go, trends come and go, ideologies come and go, pagan religions are done with. They came and went, with exception of India's remaining. And it's more symbolic and nationalistic than actual, well, who knows, but I think it's more symbolic and nationalistic. So paganism has come and gone, ideologies come and gone, Marxism come and gone, Nazism come and gone. Yet the Hajj remains, meaning Islam remains. And then I was very relaxed. I was like, what are we worried about? You know, what's true?
Yeah, I don't think we need to be worried. But we need to be still careful. And we don't want to become complacent, because like the lack of worry sometimes can just make people go, oh, I don't need to worry. I won't do anything. I won't engage with that community. I won't do nothing.
False sense of security.
Yes, and that can cause its own problems.
Yeah.
We don't need to be worried in the sense that we have tawakkul of Allah. Like Allah is the best of planners. He's the one in control, and ultimately, whatever they are planning in the akhirah, none of it's going to matter. It all turns to dust. So like we don't worry in that sense, but we should still be wanting to act, because people get that as well. Like I'm not anxious about my phone constantly, but I'm not just going to leave it lying down in a public space and then walk away from it. I'm going to do like preventative actions, even if there's not an anxiety present, even if there's not a worry. I'm going to take the best course of action, so that we've got like the optimal output. And we need to be thinking like that as a community. But we also need to be more okay with enjoining the good and forbidding the evil, which I think is another issue we're sort of facing at the moment. The anxiety around that.
We're coming up against the time, but it was really nice to have you on. I think one of the big takeaways here is that you're inside of a subgroup of Westerners that I think we oftentimes dismiss or view them as so far off from us. But I think having someone like yourself in there, I think, is really important. And maybe we should take a different, once we know that there's someone like yourself in that group or from that group, that subgroup within the Western peoples, we should have a softer attitude towards them, and hopefully maybe there will be future dialogue with them. And Allah has the power. And I said earlier, people change, but really we should say Allah changes them.
Yeah.
And Allah has the power to change any group, any people He wants. And
and it's many, and like large numbers. It's like I'm completely open to the possibility that Europe could become a Muslim majority country, not necessarily because of like this sort of right-wing trope of invasion and so on and so forth, but because they eventually recognize that the things that they are complaining about are the consequences of their own choices. The things that they promote, their lifestyles, are the things that cause many of the things that they have to then deal with. Like this idea that even the idea that Muslims are going to outpopulate them, that's not just the fact that Muslims are having kids. A big part of that is they are not. Like the idea that we the Muslims, they don't drink alcohol. It's like, but alcohol causes a massive strain on our healthcare. In the UK, we've got a good health system. I'm very grateful towards it. It's helped my family out, especially my daughter. She was born with some issues. If it wasn't for that, I don't know what we would have done. But like Friday, Saturday night comes along, and it's ram-packed with people that really shouldn't be there. They don't have to be there. They're completely avoidable. The amount of like damage done to public property as a result of that, the costs are massive socially, economically, but it's okay because a big part of it is just taxes. It makes a few people a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it helps people to drown their sorrows. It helps people to medicate themselves briefly and forget the nihilism that's overtaking them. And yeah, so just sort of like, yeah, I would say every community has hope. And a big part of that is just being willing to present yourself to them. In the same way, for example, you know, with the people, some of them that were closest to Fir'aun, the magicians, steeped in something, you know, that you would say was far away from the religion. But when truth became present to them, no threatening of the Pharaoh was enough to
that's true.
Once it had got to them, it had got to them. And you know, and that was a surprise to Pharaoh. It was a surprise to everyone that was around them. They were very much embedded in that community and they had a high status there.
Yep.
And Musa alayhi salam, you know, he had hope. He had tawakkul of Allah. He did actions. He engaged with it despite his issues with talking. You know, he gave dawah. He put himself in those awkward situations and he presented them with truth. And when it hit them, you know, it could be surprising. It was the same with the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, with the Quraysh.
That's, I totally agree. The greatest truth is al-haq, which is the reality in front of you. That's the greatest argument. That's the greatest. It's not even argument. It's a truth. That's the greatest.
And they can't accept it if you don't present it to them.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest issue.
It has to be lived.
So we need to be there. Yes.
Yeah. Large and stabilized communities with belief, purpose, relations, family relations, friend groups, businesses, flourishing businesses. That's the argument. That's what the witness is. As the Quran says, the Muslim is a witness over the other side. Well, here it is. We've done it. We put together a little world here, and don't have the ailments that you have. That's a proof that it can be overcome, and that's really the philosophy of dawah that we should be embracing and looking at. We're hitting against time, but I'm really happy that you came on. And
Jazakallah for inviting me.
But it won't be. You're going to be our what do they call it? Not the resident journalist. The
token hooligan.
The what? You're going to be our correspondent, right? I don't want to say the hooligan correspondent. No, we're retiring that. We need to have respect for the community that you emerged out of, and that's actually one of the healing things about Islam. It forces me now to hold on a second about dumping your emotions on these people and your anger on these people because they have people from amongst us there. So what are we going to call it? One of our England correspondent,
inshallah,
and our Manchester correspondent. So every once in a while we need to touch base, because I think I learned something from this. We all learned something from this, and hopefully change our attitudes towards something that we had a preconceived notion towards before.
Inshallah. So, may Allah guide us all.
I mean, I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. All right, go hit cut. Up. All right, because Alifu had to go to class. We started a bit late. Ahmed, the pharmacist, is here. He's a pharmacist. He's Egyptian. He's single. He has Malcolm X glasses, but he's wearing a farmer shirt. Wait, which style? He's got Malcolm X glasses, but he's got a red plaid shirt. But he is single. Okay, and he's Egyptian. How old are you, Ahmed? And he's 25, so he's right at the age. Okay, so if you have you want to marry Egyptian only? But are you maybe not Egyptian? But doesn't your mom have a preference and your dad? Okay, so your brother already married outside the Egyptian. He married Punjabi, so he's open to anything. If you have candidates, send them over to info@safinasociety.org. Okay, and we will send you back a picture of Ahmed the pharmacist, who's now working at a pharmacy He just graduated 6-year program. In how many years does it take to count the pills? I go to the pharmacist and all this person, I give him the thing. They go and retrieve it and give it back. And I'm like, what does it take to be a pharmacist? But I'm sure it's a lot more than that. Doesn't seem like it, but it is. 6 years, a lot of tests. And here we go. Millennial mother of 4. I have a 21-year-old sister-in-law. Send the information at info@safinasociety.org. Why are you saying astaghfirullah? This is, what are we trying to do? Something haram here? Doing something halal. Good for you. How many? No, he's at 0 and he's only aiming for 1, inshallah. So send the email. You never know. You just never know. By the way, Oz, he got married through the plug. You know that? One person led to another. And I don't know if they want me to say this, but I think we already said it. He got married through the plug. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك نشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت نستغفرك ونتوب إليك والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
قلب شفا